Who is my favorite WWE superstar of all time? That's what this video is here to find out, as I'm going to put 128 current and former WWE superstars into a single elimination to figure out who my favorite WWE superstar is. And along the way, I'm going to provide you with my reasons and my logic as to why I like or dislike certain wrestlers until we can eventually find out my favorite. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications to get more wrestling videos from me. If you're a wrestling fan, you're already in the right place, so go ahead and subscribe. All right, for round one, we're going to be moving pretty fast here. We're starting off with Shinsuke Nakamura versus Jinder Mahal. And as much as I don't want to hinder Jinder, I really do love Jinder Mahal. I'm taking Shinsuke Nakamura on this one. Next, we have Ted DiBiase Jr. and Zelina Vega, and I'm going to be taking Zelina Vega. Ooh, the Battle of Giants, Omos and Andre the Giant. I'm sorry, but I just wasn't around to witness the greatness of Andre the Giant, so I'm an Homo sapien. Crucify me in the comments. Omos is moving on. Matt Riddle or Edge? I actually really don't like Matt Riddle as a character. I'm sure as a person, he's an awesome dude. I've never been able to vibe with the bro character, so for me, I'm taking the rated R superstar Edge. Next is Sasha Banks and the Great Khali, and Sasha Banks is one of my favorite female superstars of all time. The Great Khali never did it for me. I'm taking Sasha Banks. We have Ridge Holland and Damian Priest, two newcomers really to the world of the WWE, but I'm taking Damian Priest. He's absolutely impressed me so much, especially over the last 12 months. Damian Priest is moving on. Next, we have Buddy Murphy and Ludwig Kaiser. And Ludwig Kaiser, I've fallen in love with this man. This man's promo abilities, his facial expressions, his in-ring capabilities are actually very impressive. I'm taking Ludwig. Next, we have JD McDonough and Jack Swagger, and I haven't really gotten enough of JD McDonough. Jack Swagger weirdly kind of did it for me towards the latter half of his career in the WWE, so I'm gonna take Jack Swagger, I guess. Oh, this is a tough matchup for Montez Ford. Montez is definitely climbing up the ranks, but I'm taking The Undertaker when it comes to my favorite WWE superstar of all time. Oh, next we have Butch, aka Pete Dunne, and Dominic Mysterio, and Dominic Mysterio is just gold nowadays. I'm taking Dominic. He's just too good. Next, we have Solo Sikoa and Macho Man Randy Savage, and again, I don't really have any legacy or history with Macho Man Randy Savage. I'm just not old enough to have been there in the prime of the Macho Man, so by default, I'm taking Solo Sikoa here. Next, we have Yokozuna versus Perk Angle, and I really wasn't around for Yokozuna, but Kurt Angle is one of my favorites either way. Kurt Angle would have most likely won. I'm taking the Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle. Next, we have thank you, Chad Gable and Akira Tozawa. Feel the power of Tozawa. I actually really enjoy both of them as on-screen comedy gimmicks, but Chad Gable is on another level. Plus, his in-ring capabilities are incredible. I'm taking Chatty Daddy. We have Dakota Kai and Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan is one of my favorite WWE superstars of all time, so I'm sorry, Dakota Kai. Daniel Bryan is moving on. Does Vince McMahon really count? I mean, I guess he's an on-screen character, but I'm not going to count him for the purposes of what I'm trying to do here. So I guess kind of by default, Karrion Kross moves on. Santos Escobar and Elias, and Santos Escobar just hasn't done it for me. He is not able to get a reaction out of me, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, so he still has a lot of work to do with me. Elias, at the very least, the whole Walk with Elias thing and the concerts were at least really entertaining, so I guess I'll take Elias. Oh my God, Gunta, the Ring General, and Bianca Belair. This is a brutal first round matchup, but I have to take Gunta, the Ring General. I'm taking him. I'm taking Gunta. We have Elton Prince, yes boy, versus Dean Ambrose, and I'm sorry, Elton Prince. I do love what Pretty Deadly is doing. I really do, but I'm taking Dean Ambrose. Nia Jax and Giovanni Vinci. Dude, you could have put a Rock over here, and I'm taking Giovanni Vinci. We have John Bradshaw Layfield and Baron Corbin. That's interesting. These two were paired together not that long ago, but I'm going to take JBL on this one. The whole wrestling god shtick really worked for me during the Ruthless Aggression era, so I'm taking JBL. We have Xavier Woods and Kevin Owens. Oh, dude, when it comes to favorites, they're pretty tight, honestly, because I really love both of these guys. But Kevin Owens, man, he's just consistent, regardless of whether he's a heel or a face. So I'm taking Kevin Owens. Next, it's Triple H and Asuka, another brutal first round matchup because Asuka is one of my favorite female wrestlers of all time, but Triple H is one of my favorite male wrestlers of all time. So it's kind of a coin toss, but I have more history with Triple H. He was basically the king of the Ruthless Aggression era, and that's what I grew up with. So for me, he's entrenched as, you know, one of the GOATs for me. So I'm taking Triple H. Next, we have Rey Mysterio versus The Big Show, and I've never liked The Big Show. Big Show just never did it for me, not even as a kid during the Ruthless Aggression era. Rey Mysterio, on the other hand, is that guy. Like, he was the guy that you rooted for if you were a kid in the Ruthless Aggression era. I'm taking the Rey Mysterio. We have Matt Hardy and John Morrison. Yeah. Well, I don't know if that counts as the Matt Hardy that we're trying to decipher here, because that's really TNA Impact Matt Hardy. But still, you know what? I'm still going to take Matt Hardy here. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bobby Lashley. I only got the latter, back end of Stone Cold's career, and that was still enough to absolutely change me internally as a wrestling fan. Stone Cold Steve Austin is just so awesome, and we got to see him recently at the WrestleMania 38, so I'm gonna take Stone Cold. Sorry, Bobby. I do love Bobby Lashley though. We have Sami Zayn versus the glorious Robert Roode, and oof, if we were talking like 7 years ago, I'd probably take Robert Roode. You know, those NXT Black and Gold days. Bobby Roode was just so awesome, so cool. But if we're talking nowadays, Sami Zayn has leapfrogged him. Next is Mustafa Ali and Liv Morgan, and I'm taking Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan is catapulting herself as one of my favorite WWE female superstars. We have Sting and Braun Strowman. I've been getting a lot of Sting recently on AEW, but if I'm talking purely as a WWE superstar, we only got him for like 8 months, I guess. So it's not really a fair matchup here. So I'm taking Braun Strowman. We have Otis versus Jimmy Uso. I'm taking Jimmy Uso. Yeah, the Usos are just too cool. I love Otis though. Really, truly, genuinely love Otis, but I'm taking Jimmy. Stephanie McMahon and Rikishi. I guess Stephanie McMahon, former women's champion, has had matches, is an on-screen personality, but I'm gonna take Rikishi. The stink face was always a funny move that I adored as a kid, even though like now it's kind of traumatizing to think back on it, but I'll take Rikishi. We have Shane McMahon and Hulk Hogan, and I'm gonna take Shane McMahon because I just wasn't around for the height of Hulkamania. Anytime that Hulk Hogan was around when I was a kid, a teenager, an adult, he just kind of annoyed me. So I'm taking Shane McMahon. At the very least, I've seen Shane McMahon do some absolutely bananas things in my lifetime, so I'm taking Shane McMahon. Next, we have the Animal Batista and Drew Gulak, and I'm sorry, this isn't even close. Batista, I mean, he was one of the goats of, again, the era that made me fall in love with wrestling, so Batista's moving forward. We have Natalya and Luke Gallows. Natalya, I guess. Next, we have Wade Barrett and Drew McIntyre. And I actually really like both of these guys. I love when Wade Barrett was Bad News Barrett. Drew McIntyre has really reinvented himself for me because he wasn't doing it for me as a member of 3MB or as the chosen one. But if I have to pick nowadays, I'm taking Drew McIntyre. Next, we have Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. And I'm not really familiar with the work of Ric Flair in terms of like being there live and being there in the moment. Sure, I've gone back and seen matches and I know his legacy, but he's never been one of my favorites because I never really was there to truly enjoy the run of Ric Flair. But meanwhile, I got the back half of Shawn Michaels' career, and that back half of his career alone is Hall of Fame worthy. I'm taking Shawn Michaels. Oh no, I love The Miz. I do love The Miz. And if we were talking, if we were talking 2020, just 3 years ago, I'm taking The Miz. But this reinvention of Roman Reigns as the tribal chief has just made him one of my favorites on the roster today. I'm taking The Miz. I took The Miz. Oh my God. I took The Miz. All right. Decision has been made. I just love both of those guys so much, but The Miz has just been far more consistent as one of my favorites. So The Miz it was. All right. Next up, we have Eddie Guerrero and Eric, and come on. Viva la raza. We're taking Eddie. Next, we have Shayna Baszler and Logan Paul. Dude, I'm part of the Low gang. Let's go, Logan. Let's go. We have Ricochet versus Mick Foley, and I got a little bit of Mick Foley's back half of his career with some of the stuff that he was doing in the Ruthless Aggression era. I saw that great match with Randy Orton, the feud with Edge. You know what? Ricochet, as great of as an in-ring worker that he is, and I acknowledge that, like I've never really gotten behind him or really fallen in love with him as a character. So I'm gonna take Mick Foley. Next, we have Raquel Rodriguez and Carl Anderson, and dude, just the Good Brothers just don't do it for me. I'm taking Raquel. We have Kane versus Cody Rhodes, and Kane, believe it or not, even though I got to witness like the majority of his career, he never did it for me. I never really enjoyed Kane as a character, or he never really did it for me as an in-ring performer either. Cody Rhodes, on the other hand, has always been entertaining, even when he's giving crap like Stardust. At the very least, he tried to make it work and is entertaining. But this curved version of him, dashing Cody Rhodes, I really like mustachioed Cody Rhodes. I'm taking him. I'm taking Cody Rhodes. Randy Randy Orton versus Becky Lynch. This is brutal. This is brutal. Oh, this is an absolutely unfair first round matchup. Randy Orton is moving on, but Becky Lynch got done dirty by getting put up against Randy Orton. Next, we have Rhea Ripley versus the late great Luke Harper. I love Luke Harper. I love Mr. Brody Lee, but Rhea Ripley is moving on because she is mommy. Next, we have Johnny Gargano versus Charlotte Flair, and Johnny Gargano holds a special spot in my heart because I've gotten to see like 2 5-star matches out of him live at NXT TakeOver Toronto's. Charlotte Flair is great. I do love Charlotte, but Johnny Gargano is just, to me, that like, he's just that darling that I want to see him. I want to see him succeed in every aspect of his career. So I'm taking Johnny. Next, we have Sheamus versus Chris Jericho, and I'm taking the Ayatollah of rock and roll on this one. Just, there's so many variations of Chris Jericho that I've fallen in love with. It's tough to not pick him. I'm taking Chris Jericho. Next, we have Jeff Hardy versus Brock Lesnar, and weirdly enough, even though I'm the generation that would have loved Jeff Hardy, I never got behind Jeff Hardy, not even during 2008 when he was the most popular man on the planet that wasn't named Barack Obama. Meanwhile, Brock Lesnar has just always been such an awesome performer. I've always loved Brock Lesnar. He, of course, is a staple of the Ruthless Aggression era, so I'm taking Brock Lesnar. We have LA Knight versus Bret Hart. I wasn't there for the Bret Hart days, and LA Knight, yeah, is awesome, so I'd be a dummy to not take him. LA Knight is moving forward. Razor Ramon and Cesaro. Dude, I love the Razor Ramon character, but again, like, for me to say that he's one of my favorites or that I like him more than another guy that I've actually gotten to witness and see his in-ring body of work on live television and live in person would just be me trying to play up to older wrestling fans. I'm sorry, I can't take Razor. I wasn't there for it, so I'm taking Cesaro. Oh, Christian and Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny, my favorite celebrity appearance in WWE, bar none. I think the man is so valuable to the WWE, but Captain Charisma for me is where it's at. I absolutely adore Christian, so I'm taking Christian. Also, he has one of my favorite entrance themes in WWE history, so Christian is moving on. Next up, we have Seth Rollins and Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt, dude, like most overrated WWE superstar of all time, potentially. Seth Rollins is moving on. John Cena versus Alexa Bliss. Gee, I wonder who I'm picking on this one. I'm sorry, Alexa Bliss. I love Alexa Bliss, but it's John Cena, dude. Oh, this is interesting. Goldust versus Alberto Del Rio. They're very close to one another. I'm taking Alberto Del Rio. I love the character of Alberto Del Rio, especially when he had the ring announcer came out and all the Bentleys. I liked Alberto Del Rio. I'm taking Del Rio here. Rob Van Dam versus R-Truth. Ooh, I'm sorry, R-Truth. I do love R-Truth, but Rob Van Dam was just such a cool dude, just such a cool guy. So I'm taking RVD. Ronda Rousey and Big E. Okay, this is where the comments are going to crucify me. I love Ronda Rousey. I really genuinely love Ronda Rousey. I've never been able to get behind Big E. His WWE Championship reign for me, just like, I was kind of just pretty blasé about it. I love Ronda Rousey as much as everyone hates her. I'm taking Ronda. Goldberg versus CM Punk. Goldberg is super cool. I loved Goldberg as a kid. And, you know, as much as everyone hates him when he comes back, I always kind of pop whenever we get Goldberg back. But CM Punk is one of my favorites of all time. CM Punk is moving on. We have Mark Henry versus Carmella, and I love me some Mark Henry. I especially want to shout out the Hall of Pain Mark Henry. That's the Mark Henry that I fell in love with, so I'm taking Mark Henry. Next, we have Kevin Nash and Austin Theory. Again, this is a different era that I just don't connect with. So Austin Theory for me is moving on, and I like Austin Theory. I be popping bottles, sparkles and champagne. Shotzi Blackheart and Naomi. I don't get it. I don't get the love for Shotzi. I can't get behind her. Naomi, I miss her. I miss you, Naomi. Come back. I feel the glow, baby. Okay, next we have Paul Heyman and AJ Styles. For some reason, the photo for Paul Heyman isn't populating, but I would have picked AJ Styles anyway. Next we have Kit Wilson versus The Rock. Yes, boy, but I'm taking The Rock. The Rock is moving on. Finn Balor versus Jey Uso. Oh, look, this is a brutal matchup. I love main event Jey, but Finn Balor to me has just been that guy for so long. It took Jey Uso a while for him to really catapult to the top of my list, but meanwhile, Finn Balor has just been consistently up there, so I'm taking Finn. We have Ivar versus Bayley, and I'm taking the role model Bayley on this one. Kofi Kingston and Io Sky. Everybody knows that I adore Io Sky, but this is a recent, relationship that we formed parasocial relationship, to be clear. But Kofi Kingston, I've really liked Kofi Kingston for a really long time, so I'm taking Kofi. Next, we have Dolph Ziggler and Angelo Dawkins, and it's Dolph Ziggler. It really is. My dude has just been treated dirty his whole career, but I'm taking Dolph. All right, now we are on to round 2, and we're starting off with Naomi versus Drew McIntyre. This is where Naomi's run ends. I'm taking Drew McIntyre here. Oh, Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles. Who is my favorite out of these two? Dude, I gotta be honest. I know the popular choice with people that are watching this is probably Seth Rollins. And again, this is totally about taste and about like what your favorite is. But AJ Styles for me has just been that dude. I'm taking AJ Styles. Next, we have Christian versus Bayley and Captain Charisma. I'm sorry. He's just better than the role model, the ladder matches, the character work, the promos, the feuds that he's been in. I love Christian's career in the WWE. So Christian is moving on. Next, we have Chad Gable versus Batista. And dude, give this maybe like 5 more years and it might be Chad Gable. It might very well be Chad Gable. Some of the work that he's doing right now on screen is just absolutely magnificent. But if we're talking long haul here, who is my favorite between these two? I would still take Batista today. So Batista is moving on. Next, we have Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn. Woo! Okay, so I think right now, like if I'm just voting with 2023 Brain Santiago, I'd probably take Sami Zayn. But if I'm looking at the career of both of these two, I've been far more behind Shinsuke Nakamura than I have Sami Zayn. Both of these guys are really likable dudes that I want to see succeed. But again, if I'm factoring in all the years that I've been a WWE fan, I have to take Shinsuke Nakamura. So yeah, JBL versus Kevin Owens. And for me, this one, I'm taking Kevin Owens here. Kevin Owens has just been such a consistently fun character on television for such a long time. Meanwhile, JBL, really for me, it was only those like 2-3 years as the wrestling god on SmackDown, but Kevin Owens is still that guy. Kevin Owens is moving on. Randy Orton versus Mark Henry. Funny, this is the matchup where Mark Henry won his first World Heavyweight Championship, but still, it's Randy. Sasha Banks versus Alberto Del Rio. I'm taking Sasha Banks on this one in just about every regard, in-ring work, character, feuds, everything. I like Sasha Banks more, so I'm taking Sasha. The Undertaker versus Selena Vega. I'm sorry, Selena, this one's not close. The Undertaker is moving on. Dominic Mysterio versus Brock Lesnar. Which of these two is my favorite? If I'm picking again just right now, Dominic is my favorite thing on television at this moment. But as a whole, as a WWE career, who do I prefer? Who is my favorite between these two? I have to go with Brock Lesnar. Next, we have Rob Van Dam versus Daniel Bryan. Ooh, this is a tough one because these are guys that I really got behind. Rob Van Dam is just the epitome of cool. And, when you're a kid, when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, it's really easy to identify with a guy as cool and as rad as Rob Van Dam. But in my later years, in my 20s, and now that I'm 30, I've really learned to appreciate in-ring work as a reason as to why I start to get behind a WWE superstar. And Daniel Bryan also has a great character to back as well. So I'm taking Daniel Bryan here. Next, we have Triple H versus Omos. I'm sorry, I can't be an Homo sapien because I'm taking Triple H. I didn't rig this. We got the 2 members of Imperium, Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci. Sorry, I'm trying to do my best Samantha Irving rendition there. But between these two, I like Ludwig Kaiser more. We have Edge versus Gunther, and I'm sorry, this is where the Ring General falls because Edge is just one of the coolest dudes out there. Plus, he's from my neck of the woods in Canada, so Edge is moving on. We have Raquel Rodriguez versus CM Punk. To me, again, dude, CM Punk is one of my favorites. Just as a little bit of backstory, CM Punk, to me, I genuinely feel like saved professional wrestling for me in 2011, and I don't feel like I can ever repay him for that. He really got me back into wrestling, into deeper than just the surface level of things. He got me to look at the business in a different direction, and I think part of that is what led me to doing podcasting and videos. So CM Punk is moving on. Next, we have Natalya versus Damian Priest, and I'm taking Damian Priest. Next, we have Kofi Kingston versus Liv Morgan, and I'm actually going to give this nod to Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan is just like, they're both obviously like super likable characters, but in recent years, years, I've really learned to back Liv Morgan. So in terms of favorites, I guess I'm going to go with Liv Morgan here. Karrion Kross versus Jack Swagger. I mean, both of these guys, none of them, they don't really do it for me like that much, but I guess we will always have bald, scary Karrion Kross from NXT Black and Gold. So I choose to remember him like that. So I'm taking Karrion Kross. Next, we have Solo Sikoa and Kurt Angle. And dude, this one's not even close for me. Kurt Angle is one of my favorites of all time. Yeah, Kurt Angle's moving on. Shane McMahon versus The Miz, and The Miz with the major first round upset, defeating the Tribal Chief, and he's defeating Shane McMahon as well. The Miz is just so good. He's such a fun character. He's been such a great character for over a decade at this point. It's so easy for me to get behind The Miz. I love The Miz. The Miz is moving on. Next, we have Elias versus Dean Ambrose, and aside from the concerts thing, Elias has never really done it for me. Meanwhile, Dean Ambrose was such a fun character that just was misutilized in WWE. Dean Ambrose is moving on. Next, we have Matt Hardy versus Jimmy Uso, and again, character work right now, it's Jimmy Uso, but in the long term, I'm taking Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy version 1. Rhea Ripley versus Eddie Guerrero, and tough matchup, but you know, as a Latino kid in the Ruthless Aggression era, dude, like, this is the guy I identified with. So Eddie Guerrero is moving on. I'm trying to click it. There we go. Next, we have Mick Foley versus Logan Paul. And no, I don't want to make this choice. Yeah, I still have more fond memories with Mick Foley. So Mick Foley is moving on for me. Next, we have Rikishi and Dolph Ziggler. To me, this is an easy one. I'm far more likely to back Dolph Ziggler in this type of popularity contest. So Dolph is moving on. Next, we have Shawn Michaels versus Rey Mysterio. Oh my word. You have got to be kidding me, dude. This one is absolutely brutal. Okay, so which one is my favorite? I absolutely adore Shawn Michaels, but I was in love with Rey Mysterio as a kid. Oh, dude, toss a coin on this one. I think in the grand scheme of things, I was always just far more excited to see Shawn Michaels. So I'm taking Shawn, but this was tight. This was so tight. LA Knight, yeah, versus Cesaro. Dude, just the work that I've seen LA Knight do in the WWE over the last 3 years, that's enough. That's enough to win this battle. I'm taking LA Knight. Next, we have Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Finn Balor. Oh, you got to be kidding me. Okay, between these two, if I have to pick a favorite WWE superstar, I only got about a year and a half worth of Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's all I got out of him. And Finn Balor has just been entertaining me for now the better part of a decade. Between The Fiend, the stuff that he's doing with the Judgment Day, his in-ring body of work. Dude, this is every Attitude Era kid guy is flipping a table right now. I'm taking Finn Balor. Again, we're doing favorites here. John Cena versus Braun Strowmer. I'm taking John Cena. We have Cody Rhodes versus Ronda Rousey. And don't worry, okay? This is not going to be a world where Stone Cold gets eliminated in round 2 and Ronda Rousey makes it to round 3. I'm taking Cody Rhodes. Next, we have The Rock versus Austin Theory. And dude, 2003 heel Hollywood Rock will always have such a deep spot in my heart. The Rock is moving on. Okay, next we have Johnny Gargano versus Chris Jericho. And yeah, as much as I gushed over Johnny Gargano earlier, Chris Jericho is just such a character, man. Such an absolutely fantastic character worker. Chris Jericho is moving on. All right, now we are in round 3 and we're starting off with a battle of heavy hitters. We have Triple H versus John Cena, the Cerebral Assassin versus the Champ, the Game versus the face that runs the place. We have, what else does he go? The King of Kings versus, what else can we call John Cena? Whatever. Okay, I'm done with these nicknames. Look, both of these guys they may be top 5 in my list. They literally really are. Triple H is just probably my favorite heel of all time, and John Cena is my favorite face of all time. I think in the grand scheme of things, I always just gravitated more to John Cena as a kid that grew up in the Ruthless Aggression era and got to witness the rise of John Cena. So John Cena is moving forward for me. Next, we have Sasha Banks versus Ludwig Kaiser, and this was always a losing battle for Ludwig Kaiser. Sasha Banks is one of my favorite female WWE superstars, so Sasha Banks is absolutely moving on. Next up, we have Finn Balor versus AJ Styles, and oh, dude, they're kind of cut from the same cloth here. And even though they're cut from the same cloth, I always just find myself gravitating far more to Finn Balor. Finn Balor, I just feel like has more range as a character worker as well. I'd say that they're both pretty equal when it comes to in-ring prowess. So because of that, I'm taking Finn Balor. Oh, next up we have Shinsuke Nakamura versus CM Punk. You already heard my ramble here about CM Punk, but I want to talk about Shinsuke Nakamura because this is the man that I think single-handedly got me to, one, care about NXT, and two, got me to check out other promotions that weren't the WWE at the time. So I credit Shinsuke Nakamura for opening up my world when it comes to consuming professional wrestling, but I'm still taking CM Punk here. Next, we have Matt Hardy, yes, versus Kurt Angle. And again, this is a tough matchup for anybody. Kurt Angle is one of the funniest dudes on screen when he's a face. Even when he's a heel, he's funny. When he's an intense face or an intense heel, he's one of the scariest dudes that you can have on screen. And he's just such a wrestling machine. I have to take Kurt Angle. All right, next up we have The Miz versus Randy Orton. And even though The Miz was the one to finally dethrone the tribal chief Roman Reigns, I'm taking Randy Orton here. All right, we have Captain Charisma Christian versus Batista. And this might be another upset, but I just like Christian more. I really do. I think Batista is very shallow as a character worker. His in-ring work is good. And yeah, he's obviously had the bigger matches and the bigger feuds because he's the bigger superstar. But everything that Christian is given, he makes work. He just, even when he's given shitty situations, he makes it entertaining. So I'm taking Christian when it comes to being my favorite WWE superstar. Next, we have The Undertaker versus LA Knight. And I'm sure you would all scream, yeah, at this decision because I have to take The Undertaker. Next, we have Karrion Kross, who really has no business making it this deep into this tournament, versus The Rock, one of my favorites of all time. The Rock is moving on. Next, we have Kevin Owens versus Drew McIntyre. And I think as an overall performer, not just in ring, but if we include character work, everything that they've done to make things entertaining, I think Kevin Owens just has a better resume. So when it comes to my favorite between these two, I'm taking Kevin Owens. Isn't this the dream match that everybody wanted to see? Shawn Michaels versus Dolph Ziggler. This is where Dolph's run ends. You know, Shawn Michaels did dethrone one of my favorite childhood heroes in Rey Mysterio, so it'd be kind of ludicrous to have him lose now. Shawn Michaels is moving on. Ooh, inaugural members of the Judgment Day, Edge and Damian Priest. This is interesting. The work that Damian Priest is doing right now is absolutely A++++ amazing. But Edge has been doing A+++ amazing for 20 years. So Edge is moving on. Next up, we have Dean Ambrose and Chris Jericho, two guys that have really carried AEW into prominence in its early days. But between these two as WWE characters, I'm taking Chris Jericho. Next, we have Liv Morgan and Eddie Guerrero. Great run by Liv Morgan, but when you run into the Latino heat, Eddie Guerrero, you're gonna lose. Eddie Guerrero is moving on. Next, we have Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar, and I put both of these guys together when it comes to in-ring work. I think their in-ring caliber of work is top notch. Daniel Bryan's is better. I like Daniel Bryan's character more. I like the underdog story of Daniel Bryan as opposed to the final boss story that Brock Lesnar tells. So I'm taking Daniel Bryan. Next, we have Mick Foley versus Cody Rhodes, and I feel like Mick Foley has had an easy run into this point of the tournament. So I'm taking Cody Rhodes. All right, we are on to the round of 16, and isn't this just a fantastic matchup? We have Daniel Bryan versus CM Punk, and both of these guys hold special places in my heart. I know that the popular thing right now is to not like CM Punk, but that's all stuff that he did in AEW. I'm talking his WWE career, and I'm taking CM Punk. Next, we have The Undertaker versus Cody Rhodes. This is tough. Like, when it comes to being my favorite, like, there's just more for me to draw on when it comes to The Undertaker. Like, obviously, like the Dead Man, I was also there for the American Badass. So I'm sorry, Cody, you don't get to finish the story in this tournament. The Undertaker is moving on. Next, we have John Cena versus Christian. This would have been just a great rivalry to have more of. We got it a little bit, but not enough. This really should have been a proper rivalry. Both of these guys are fantastic in-ring competitors. Well, in-ring competitors for John Cena might be a stretch, but they're both great WWE superstars and both great on the microphone, and they both can tell a fantastic story. I'm taking John Cena though. Next, we have Edge versus Chris Jericho. Ooh, damn, this is a brutal matchup. Both of these guys have a knack for reinventing themselves and making themselves relevant with whatever it is that they're given when it comes to creative. But Chris Jericho is just better at it. So I have to take Chris Jericho. As much as I do love Edge, Chris Jericho is one of my favorites of all time. Chris is moving on. Next up, we have Finn Balor versus Eddie Guerrero, and Finn Balor has knocked off some giants in the industry in this tournament, but this is where he loses. He is going to be losing to Eddie Guerrero today because Eddie lied, he cheated, and he steals, baby. Next, we have Sasha Banks versus Shawn Michaels, and another upset alert. I identify more with Sasha Banks. She's, to me, just a favorite. One of my favorites of all time, like just period. So I'm taking Sasha Banks as sacrilege as this is to the Attitude Era folks that watch my videos. You have to understand where I'm coming from. Where I'm not I'm not in my 40s. I wasn't there for the height of the Attitude Era. I wasn't there for the golden years. I have to identify with the characters and the wrestlers that I was able to witness live growing up, and also here is in my 20s and into my 30s. Sasha Banks is moving on. Oh, Randy Orton versus Kurt Angle. This might actually be, for me, the tightest one because I hold both of these guys in incredibly high regard. Randy Orton's work as a heel in the Ruthless Aggression Era, Bald Randy, legend killer, and then now kind of the jaded veteran that he's been playing over the last couple of years. He's such a good character worker. Obviously, I think he's a fantastic in-ring worker. He's had some phenomenal giant feuds. All of that, and he still loses to Kurt Angle when it comes to my eyes as my favorite of all time. Kurt Angle is, to me, he's on another level when it comes to in-ring work and character work. I'm taking Kurt Angle. And then we have Kevin Owens versus The Rock. It's almost like the modern day Stone Cold versus obviously The Rock, which is kind of neat. The Rock, I only got his back half of his career from 2001 into about 2004. But dude, in that time, he was my favorite. He was my favorite wrestler. This is the first guy that I was able to latch onto and gravitate to and call, this is my favorite wrestler of all time. He was my first GOAT. He was my first GOAT. So I'm sorry, Kevin Owens, but it's The Rock. And now we are in the Elite Eight. We are in the final 8, folks, and we are with one of my favorite WWE female superstars of all time, with probably one of my favorite male superstar of all time, Sasha Banks. I'm sorry, you could have gone deeper if you didn't run into John Cena. Seriously, I think you could have gone all the way. But running into the Doctor of Thugonomics is where your story ends. John Cena is moving on. And then we have Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Jericho. And this is also where Eddie's story ends, because Chris Jericho is just, honestly, I think they're both kind of on par where when it comes to in-ring and character work, but sadly we just didn't get enough Eddie, sadly, and I got to see a lot more Chris Jericho, so I'm taking Chris Jericho. As much as this actually hurts my heart, I'm taking Chris. And in the other side of the bracket, we have The Undertaker versus CM Punk. Okay, again, we're talking favorites of all time. Do not crucify me. Look, this is the comment section is your place to go off. But again, how can you go off on someone when we're talking about favorites? I'm not saying anyone here is the best of all time. I'm just saying they're my favorite, all right? And CM Punk, I just like him more than The Undertaker. I thought he was so cool in the back half of the Ruthless Aggression Era. The 2010s, he was the best thing going in wrestling for me. I'm taking CM Punk. And then we have Kurt Angle versus The Rock, another brutal matchup for me. Both of these guys are two of my favorites of all time. Why did I decide to do this video? Why did I do this to myself? Okay, look, I'm still taking. I'm taking Kurt Angle. I have to take Kurt Angle. I got way more Kurt Angle in my life than I got The Rock. They're both just so fantastic. But when it comes to my era of wrestling, where really I was cognitively old enough to really fall in love with the product, Kurt Angle is that dude. And now we are in the semifinals. We have Kurt Angle versus CM Punk. This would have also been an absolute dream feud, dream matchup. up. Both of these guys, to me, when it comes to my personality, when it comes to my taste in professional wrestling, are very, very important key figures into the person that you've grown to know here on this YouTube channel or on Twitch or on TikTok, wherever it is that you follow me. So it's a tough matchup, but at the end of the day, we're going with Kurt Angle. And in the other semifinal, we have John Cena and Chris Jericho. Again, like just two of my favorite characters of all time. Ultimately, I just identify more with John Cena. So as much as I do genuinely adore Chris Jericho, you have to understand that now we're at the point where these last few that I've been showing you, I love these guys. I absolutely love them, but I just love John Cena a little bit more. And isn't it funny how it worked out this way? Isn't it funny that I'm recording this on the anniversary of John Cena's debut, and his debut was against Kurt Angle, and now the final of like my two favorite wrestlers is between John Cena and Kurt Angle. I'm sure those people that know me already knew that the answer was John Cena. Like, he is my favorite of all time. I just wanted to give you some of my thought process into these decisions, why I like certain guys over others, or gals over others, etc., etc. So hopefully you enjoyed this, but I'm sure those that know me already knew the spoiler end of this video, because my favorite WWE superstar really, truly, genuinely is John Cena. He is just such an important figure, not just in my wrestling fandom, but really like in my life. Like I've been following this dude for the better part of 20 plus years. He shaped my personality. Like, I really do genuinely, as a teenager, I non-ironically really lived the words of hustle, loyalty, and respect. That's just what I grew up with, man. We're not here to judge each other. We're just here to talk wrestling. Get out of here.